But what's cool is the people we sold 80% to are pouring in, not only did they pay us a whole bunch of money, they're pouring in tens of millions of dollars to expand it everywhere else. So our 20% that we sold will be worth more than 5 times, which means we'd be exactly even with what we sold within 2 years, right? 5 years should be a lot more. So the structure that I like to think about is the framework for kind of everything is, what's the structure of the business? What are the objectives that we want to achieve? What are the activities that we have to do to achieve the objectives? And then how do we build in processes and systems to automate everything and document it so that it is replicable? And the first part is the structure. So we get into some of my favorite stuff. And I want to be sure that you, because a lot of you are asking about this, I want to be sure that you ask any questions that you want so we get this down. So you can structure by value cache. That's one way to think about structuring, is that you want to structure by profit center, because that's where value is held, or tangible assets, or intangible assets and other intellectual property. That would be one way to do it. Another way would be by objective. Maybe I prefer the laws in certain jurisdictions over other places, therefore I'm going to create my entities in the places that have the most favored laws for each of the things I'm concerned about. Because there may be more favorable tax laws in one place, but there may be more favorable liability laws in a different place. There may be more established laws in another place. So like your entity, you might choose to establish one place that has very established laws that are favorable to you as an entity owner, but you might choose to put your processing in a different place because the company that does the processing is in a tax-free or tax-favored jurisdiction, and so on and so forth. You might do it for geographic diversity because you have different cap tables, which I'll show you in a minute, to be able to maintain control, to be funding friendly. When I came into Digital Marketer, we were a limited liability partnership, which no bank on the planet understands what it is, to save taxes, or to prep for sale or limit liability. So the chart that I like to use for this is looking at each possible value cache, profit center, tangible, intangible, intellectual property, and what is my objective, the ones that we talked about. Then you can just decide what is important to you. Okay? So for each of these types of things, you can decide what is most important to you, and then that's how you pick your jurisdiction. Okay? And then there are different types of entities that you can pick. And so you have a table that also says these are all of the types of entities that would be appropriate for each of these objectives. So my strategy is sell the eggs and keep the geese. So the way that I like to structure this stuff, and I think it's served me very, very well, is you've got you. And ideally, you have some sort of estate plan. If you don't, talk to an attorney tomorrow and get your trust or family partnership or PLC or whatever the hell you call it together. And then you have partners and you have potentially investors. Now, for me, if possible, I do not like to have investors in my holding company. I prefer to have investors in individual companies because this is kind of the mothership. So at least it's good to limit your cap table. Cap table is just kind of who owns what. Limit your cap table as much as possible with your holding company, but do have a holding company because it can provide you an arbitrage for taxes between and liability between that company and you as an individual. I like working with partners. I don't have any business that I don't have partners in because partners make your life happy. I believe if you choose well and you get things documented, then your partners are only amplifying your strengths because they're doing things that aren't your favorite thing to do. You tend to self-sabotage the things that you don't want to do, even if you try to take them on. So I find there are partners that actually enjoy those things. And so I do like having partners, but I don't like having investors there. Then you have your ops company, so primary business. Now, primary business, I don't mind having other partners in, other investors, because they don't own this, and this company typically, the holding company, I'll put all of the IP for all of our companies in an intellectual property company that's domiciled in a place that's very favorable. Typically, it's offshore. So just as a concept, your intellectual property, I like to put in just one company. I like for it to be offshore. And I like for it to be separate. You want to actually have license agreements that are real agreements that are done, that are drawn up by your attorney for that. And then for us, we found, because we have so many companies, that it doesn't make sense to have our sales team, our financial team, or our media properties that are operating in each of the companies. It makes sense to have a distributed sales team and a distributed finance team doing all of the accounting and all of the sales and such for all these things. So we put them in a share co, and then that shared company is the only company that has payroll, because otherwise we'd have all these other companies that had to do payroll and all that other stuff. And then ShareCo contracts with the operating companies, and that is adjusted based on use. So it's a usage price model, right? We know how much it costs to have those people, and so we just determine what the usage cost is, and as each company consumes, it pays its share. If for some reason that's not enough to cover the operating expenses here, then we just do a call for that's done proportionate based on revenue for the companies. So that's kind of how our share co works. So now, when you want to start other ops companies, you might start them for any of the reasons that we talked about. So let's say you have a new liability through a different product line. So you're going to start selling air rifles or knives, or, So this allows you to have different cap tables, and not only for your investors, but for your team. Because let's say that there's a team here, and the team says, we want to participate. It's reasonable and unreasonable at the same time. We want to, we're going to be a big part of this. Or you have a sweat equity partner, or you've got somebody that's got a reputation that they're bringing, or other resources. Then you can set this up and have the cap table be different, and your holding company can be one of the cap table people here, but your investors or your team or your resource providers can also be, and then they only have an interest in the company that they should have an interest in. It keeps this clean, really clean. Now, you can sell any of these companies individually, or you can sell the shared companies if you need to. You can sell the intellectual property, or you can sell the whole shooting match. But this gives you the ability to be maximally flexible. So this is one of our holding companies. So this is the holding company Idea Incubator, which has Rival Media Group. It's one of our groups, I should say. So one of our corporate groups, the holding company owns Rival Media Group, which is the brand that then owns all of these different properties. Okay? So each of these properties is its own entity, owned by this entity, which is one of 5 major business units, which is all owned by one company. So what we can do, selling the geese and the eggs, those are the major operating units, and then those are the individual media properties. So we could sell the whole thing, right? But rather than selling the whole thing, I don't like even selling at this level. I like selling down here. So to me, this is the geese. These are the geese. This is the mothership. And then these are the eggs that I'd like to sell. So T&C is a good example of that. So T&C is an egg, because Digital Marketer is owned by the holding company, and then Digital Marketer owned True Conversion, Digital Agency Summit, Praxio, T&C, Digital Marketer HQ, Content and Commerce as separate entities. We spun off this one. We sold 80%, kept 20%. But what's cool is the people we sold 80% to are pouring in, not only did they pay us a whole bunch of money, they're pouring in tens of millions of dollars to expand it everywhere else. So our 20% that we sold will be worth more than 5 times, which means we'd be exactly even with what we sold within 2 years, right? 5 years should be a lot more. So that's kind of that's kind of fun, right?